my pride and joy. I spent a week making this.
This cabinet, built by vegetable farmer Gavin Phillips, secures 12 of his prized possessions.
Kathleen, what we've got here is a 12-gauge shotgun, under and over, which we use for hunting rabbits.
Each one has a unique purpose.
Look, it's a little bit like a game of golf. You can't play the whole game with one club. The 30-30 for pig hunting. The 222 here, which we use for taking out foxes.
They're all registered in his name, and like many farmers in the regional city of Bendigo in Victoria, he uses them often.
Nice crisp action to open and close. It was probably 3 or 4 weeks where I was hunting most mornings and evenings, and I shot 17 hares, which were, you know, a hare in your property could take out 100 cauliflowers in a night.
He's been a gun owner for almost 50 years.
And would you say you need all 12?
It's not really a matter of need. You know, my view is we live in a free country, and as responsible people we get to enjoy being able to own a lot of firearms. We run this through the barrels to keep them clean.
Gavin opposes any measures to reduce the number of firearms licensed gun owners can hold.
It's really not a case of the amount of guns. It's more a case of a person being fit and proper to own firearms. I mean, whether you own 1 firearm or 2 firearms or 10 firearms is really not the point we really need to be looking at.
In the wake of the Bondi terror attack in December last year, the Prime Minister recalled Parliament to fast-track new gun control legislation. One of the alleged gunmen legally owned 6 firearms.
Today, I'm also announcing that the government will establish a national gun buyback scheme to purchase surplus, newly banned and illegal firearms, the largest buyback since the Howard government initiated one in 1996. There are now more than 4 million firearms in Australia, more than at the time of the Port Arthur massacre, nearly 30 years ago.
Under the federal government's buyback scheme, the number of firearms a person could own was left up to the states to decide. Last week, the deadline passed for state and territory governments to introduce legislation for the scheme.
It hasn't started. It's another failure of this government.
A federal government spokesperson told 730 the buyback scheme will lead to a significant reduction in the number of guns in our community. One of the sticking points with the states has been how the scheme would be funded, with the federal government only willing to cover half the cost. Among the states, New South Wales and the ACT are the only jurisdictions on board. New South Wales has already proposed a cap of 4 guns for recreational licence holders and 10 for primary producers and sporting shooters. Western Australia has its own gun buyback scheme. Victoria undertook a review of the state's gun laws, but the Premier rejected a cap.
The government will not be introducing a cap on firearm ownership. Where we need to place our focus is on the criminals who get their hands on one single gun.
Deborah Paris lives with the devastating impact of gun violence. Her 36-year-old son David was murdered by his prospective father-in-law, a farmer who was a registered gun owner in the Premier's own electorate of Bendigo East.
I live every day of my life with the weight of a ball and chain around my heart. I hope your Premier never knows what that feels like. But she needs to do better. They all need to do better.
David moved to Bendigo from Western Australia in 2009.
I am so proud of him. He was such a nice person. I used to think that he was naive and didn't understand people, but he wasn't.
Trouble started when 53-year-old Max Payne, suffering from a delusional disorder, began accusing David of sleeping with his wife. Despite his condition, Max Payne continued to hold a gun licence.
It was here at a property in Raywood, around a half an hour drive from Bendigo's CBD back in 2014, where David Paris was shot and killed by his soon-to-be father-in-law Max Payne at close range with a double-barrel shotgun. He was then sentenced to 23 years in prison.
The court was told Max Payne owned 4 guns. Deborah says that's too many and supports a gun buyback scheme.
Maybe if he hadn't had so many, it would have been a case of, yeah, well, I can't really use that. And he might have just let it go. I don't know.
The Victorian Premier is battling a dismal approval rating, and recent polls show growing support for One Nation ahead of the state election in November.
Is the Premier prioritising the high number of licensed gun owners in her own electorate above keeping Victorians safe from mass shootings?
In answering the member for Richmond's question, can I reject in the strongest possible terms the characterisation?
Jacinta Allen declined 7:30's request for an interview, but in a statement, a spokesperson said the state government is still working with the federal government on gun reform. Like many regional cities, the Premier's seat has a high number of recreational shooters, like Lance Phillips.
I've got, say, 12, 13 firearms I use for hunting and target shooting, but a lot of people have many more firearms.
Lance has been hunting and shooting since he was 12.
Bill, come on, boy. There's no merit in capping guns because if someone does want to use a gun for the wrong reason, you only need one gun.
He says the Premier's position on guns won't be enough to sway him come election day.
I've turned my back on parties and tried to vote for someone outside the main political system like One Nation or Family First or some independents.
Back in WA, Deborah Paris sees the gun debate as not how many votes can be won, but how many lives can be saved.
I don't think gun laws should even be considered as a political stand. You know, I've heard the arguments of a right to bear arms, but these people that have been killed had the right to live.